1.4, absolute value, writing an absolute value equation, and absolute value on both sides notes. Day 2. So we're going to start with writing an absolute value. So there's a couple ways that it can be given to you. So when writing an absolute value, we need a couple of things. An absolute value. So there's a couple of ways that it's given to you. So it can be given to you as a graph, or it can be given to you as a solution. So the solutions or answers, the answers say x equals 4, comma 5. So normally we solve for x and get these as our answers. So this is what we would circle at the end, but now we're going the other direction. So we're undoing it. We're starting with the answer and working backwards. So it's sometimes a little bit more complicated, and that's why a lot of times in upper level mathematics, people get a little confused, is because they're having to think about both ways. So what we want to do here is look at using a graph to help us think through the absolute value equation. And so it really helps us to visualize what things are happening. So let's plot our two solutions, 4 and 5, and I'll put those on my number line. So I'm going to plot 4 and 5 on my number line. So now when we thought back next till the day 1 work, remember we had this brackets up here? They were the same distance apart, and here the same distance is 0.5 or 0.5 away from that middle. Ooh, those are the important pieces that we need. So that 0.5, the number up here, how far away they are from that center, and our center is 4.5. So those are the numbers that we need. So a graph really just helps us organize that. So plotting those points on our graph, then looking at where those things are. So now when we write our equation, remember we have to absolute value equals, and then we also need an x, and at the same time subtract. So this needs to be subtract. Make that nice and bold and capitalized, because that is the key. Because if you don't have subtract there, you're going the wrong direction. So now the easiest, I don't usually start with the inside part. I know it's left to right. When we read it left to right, it's easiest that way. But I like to start with my answer. So my answer is how far away from the center is it? And the answer is 0.5. So that's what I like to do, is how far away from it is 0.5. That means my 4.5 is the only other spot left is right here. So in writing that equation, that absolute value equation, if we were to go and solve it, we would come up with that solution 4 and 5, because it's a half away from each of the center, and that center is right 4.5, because it has to be that subtract. So now when we go and solve absolute value with two absolute values, it's pretty much the same thing as what we've been doing. It's just a little different. It looks a little different. So we've got absolute value and an absolute value. So what we're going to do is, well, get that one absolute value by itself, which it is, sort of like what we did before. So now we just need a -1 and a +1, or solutions. So those are the solutions for a positive and a negative. So 3x minus 4 is the same on both sides for both of them. And our x this time is the opposite, meaning negative. So the opposite of positive is negative, and the opposite of or a positive of a positive is positive. And now we just solve it like we normally do. So I'm going to get my x's together. So I'm going to add x to both sides. Add x to both sides. And that'll be 4x minus 4 equals, and negative x plus x is a 0. Just keep solving. Going to do that same thing here, except this one's going to be a minus x. So 2x minus 4 equals 0. Add 4 to both sides to get that x by itself. Those cancel out. So 4x equals 4. Divide both sides by 4. So x equals 1. Or 2x equals 4. Divide both sides by 2. So x equals 2. So what we do have to do is check to make sure they are correct. Otherwise, we're not sure that they will work. So we want to do our checks and a quick check. So the absolute value of 3 times 1 minus 4, closed absolute value, equals the absolute value of 1. The other check is absolute value of 3 times 2 minus 4 should equal the absolute value of 2. So we'll double check that. So 3 minus 4 is a negative 1. So the absolute value of negative 1 should equal the absolute value of 1. And it does. So we can put a check mark there for that one. So now the other one, the x plus 2 side, is 6 minus 4. The absolute value of that is the absolute value of 2. Does that equal the absolute value of 2? And 2 does equal 2. So that also works. So we can write our solutions down. X equals 1, 2. And we do it in order from least to greatest. That's their normal way of writing them. All right, so now let's do another example. Example number 3. The absolute value of 4x minus 10 equals 2 absolute value of 3x plus 1. So remember, this is not distributive. It's not a distributive property. And the reason why it isn't is because it's an absolute value sign. And I'm just going to put yet, because that will become a distributive, but not yet. So we have to undo that absolute value first. So to undo that, we have a negative side and a positive side. So negative side means that, just like we saw before, the left side we always kept the same, positive, the same from both. And then it was the right side that became negative. So that negative 2 becomes opposite. And over here, the 2 is positive. So now what happens here is this is still a grouping. So it is, absolute value is a grouping symbol. It's just not a distributive property yet. Now, when we take that negative and a positive, what happens is it undoes that absolute value and makes it a grouping symbol. So now we can distribute that negative 2 on the left and the positive 2 on the right. So we'll distribute. So 4x minus 10 equals negative 6x minus 2. Careful of that. 4x minus 10 equals 6x plus 2. So we're going to get our x's together. I'll make plus 6x. So 10x minus 10 equals negative 2. Add 10 to both sides. So 10x equals 8. Divide by 10. And remember, we always have to simplify. Oop, I forgot my x. X equals 4/5. And then for the other one, minus 4x to keep it positive. I kind of like my x's to be positive. So negative 10 equals 2x plus 2 minus 2. So negative 12 equals 2x. Divide both sides by 2. So x equals negative 6. So now what happens is when we substitute those back in, we will notice that it does make it true. Okay, so when we do, you can do the check marks, but I want to get on to example number 4 where it possibly doesn't. So we want to do our checks. And when we do, I've done them already. So when we write our solutions, we want to write it in least to greatest. So negative 6 is the least on our number line, and 4/5 is our bigger number. So now when we get to our 4th example, we've got the absolute value of 3n plus 18 equals 6n. So now what's a little different, absolute value is by itself. That's what we want. And so when we solve this, we're going to take the negative and the positive. And remember, that's what we do to undo that absolute value. So in solving absolute value equations, we're undoing that absolute value by taking a negative and a positive. That is the act of undoing the absolute value. So we've got 3n plus 18, and the same over here. And the negative would be the negative 6n is the opposite of that, and the positive would be the same as that. So now when we're solving, 6n plus 6n zeroes out, so 9n plus 18 equals 0. Subtract 18 from both sides, so 9n equals negative 18. Divide by 9, n equals negative 2. On the positive side, we've got minus 3n from both sides, getting n by itself by dividing both sides by 3 now. So 6 equals n. So now when I do my check, we can substitute that negative 2 in. So the absolute value of 3 times negative 2 plus 18 should equal 6 times negative 2. So negative 6 plus 18 should equal negative 12. So negative 6 plus 18 is the absolute value of 12. That will equal negative 12. Wait a minute. The absolute value of 12 is 12, and there is no absolute value over here, so it's negative 12. So that does not work. So it does not work. Let's put that slash through all those because that's not true. So that means negative 2 is not a solution. So now when we check 6, the absolute value of 3 times 6 plus 18 should equal 6 times 6. So that would be the absolute value of 18 plus 18, which should equal 36. 18 plus 18 is, so the absolute value of 36 does equal 36. So that one is true. So our only solution for this problem would be n equals 6. So on our answer line over on the side, we would write n equals 6, the only one. And if we put a negative 2 over here, we would be stating a wrong solution with a right one. So that's why we have to double check. We have to check our answers now, because sometimes they have ones that are incorrect so that we can produce the ones that are correct. And that is how we write absolute value and solve more complicated absolute value equations.